Welcome to HeartMind-ify. Before we start the show, just a reminder to share, rate, and subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it. And please give us a 5-star rating. It helps us beat the big tech algorithms.
I'm John Izzy. Change can be difficult for a lot of us, but when we understand what makes us tick, we develop a better understanding of who we are and begin a journey of discovering our best self. Join me for a free session at johnizzy.com.
And I'm Kim Cordy, creator of the Emotion Chef Framework, an emotion management tool. Thoughts drive emotions, and emotions drive thoughts, but it's our emotions that drive our decisions and behaviors. Find out more at kimcordy.com.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Knowing each other personally and socially for the past 10 years, Kim and John have joined forces, bringing years of experience and training, providing a platform for growth and personal development, along with a little humor. John is the heart, Kim is the mind, and together they are HeartMind-ify. Hello, Kim. It's Thursday. How are you?
I am fantastic, John. Yourself?
You know, I'm doing okay. I want to say things are calming down, but then as soon as I turn on the news, it's like, yeah, nothing's calming down.
I'm so sick of it all. I'm just ignoring it. In fact, I said, okay, no more news because I was so addicted to it. And then last night I started watching Big Bang Theory.
Oh, I love that show.
I can really never, ever watch enough of it. On TBS, they have like hours of Big Bang Theory. And if I just want some happy moments in my life, I just watch that show. It's so ridiculous.
Oh, it's so good. On the East Coast last night, they had the Sheldon was sick
Soft
episode.
kitty, warm,
yeah. Oh my God, I was dying. I was dying. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Great writing, great characters, great acting. It's just, it's one of those magical shows that you just can't ever get sick of. But last night, the episode that I watched had put in my mind for today an introduction for our show.
Oh, yeah?
It was
what was
perfect. Raj, as you know, is always looking for love. He met a girl who was, as he put it, more emotionally broken than he was. He had scoured the internet to find her personal blog, and he literally said how it took him hours to find it. And he read her blog, and upon reading it, she had written about him that he was feminine. So he had her over for dinner. She shows up. He's wearing a hockey jersey. He's acting all manly. And so she's like, I'm leaving. I don't know what's wrong with you. And he confesses, I found your blog. And in your blog, you said I was feminine. And so I needed to show you I'm a man. Like, I am manly. And she's like, no, I like that about you. And they kind of make up and resume their dinner, and they explain it all. She said to him, where did you get that jersey? And he replies, oh, at a Taylor Swift concert. So it came out, So, in all of its adorableness, it is perfect to introduce the show today, because there's this whole women have to be women and men have to be men. And there's a dividing line, and don't cross it, or you're not really a woman or you're not really a man.
So what are we talking about? Masculine and feminine, or masculine and feminine energies? Because there's a difference, right?
Well, is there though? Because isn't that the energy that you produce? I'm asking you, because that's what came into my head was our show. And
yeah.
You're expert. So I'm looking for you. That. Well, for me, you are, because I don't know enough about it. All I know is that Andrew says I'm half man. Like he's like, you act like a man, you think like a man, but you're a woman. So I don't know, is that because I've got a mix of masculine and feminine energy? Is it because I have feminine and masculine traits? I mean, I don't know. I just thought, John, help me out. Like, what's the story with me? What's the story with Raj?
So energies. So everyone knows about the yin and the yang, right? The male and the female representation.
I wouldn't assume that.
Okay, but everybody's has heard in some time in their life yin and yang, and they know the symbol with the little circle and the other circle, and then they're coming together into one.
Fair enough.
So one of the sides of that represents masculine energy, and one of the side represents feminine energy. And when they come together, they're balanced, male and masculine and feminine energies. So what the energies represent, that in our core. So it's what gives us perspective on certain things. So if we're masculine, if we tend to be more masculine in our energy, we tend to be more logical, right? We tend to be more analytical, more structured, more focused, more directed. Think of a typical, think of our government, think of a typical structure in corporate world. It's very, top tier, and, you've got the CEO, and then you've got the rest of the C-suites, and then, everything is very structured. And so it gives off a very masculine energy. Women also have masculine energies, and men have female energies, right? So female energies would be energies that are intuitive. They look at the whole. It's a broad perspective. It's more fluid. It's random. It's unrestricted. Those are basic female energies or feminine energies. But that doesn't mean that men can't share in those energies. In fact, a lot of men do share those energies. And when you combine those energies and they're balanced, you get wisdom with logic and intuition. You get something that's courageous. You're able to set appropriate boundaries. You lead with compassion, right? So there's a sense of men think that they only have masculine energy. And if you find a man that cries, you're too girly. Well, no, that's not true. What it's saying is that he's in touch with his feminine energies, that he's able to express himself emotionally. And, look at a father who's very nurturing to their child. You wouldn't say that father is feminine. You would just say that, look how he is with his kids. Well, nurturing is a very feminine, energetic category. So the key is bringing those energies together to live more balanced. So what she was seeing in Raj, right, is someone that's in touch with his feminine side, someone that is able to be open-minded or imaginative or creative or emotionally balanced, right? So that's what she saw in him. And he interpreted that as being something, I'm not a girl, I'm a man, so I'm going to go get a hockey shirt, right? When that's not what she was saying. What she was saying is, no, I love that about you, because sensitivity and compassion is not a weakness in men. In fact, it's a strength in men. I love that show, and I'm so glad you brought it up. But it's interesting, and a lot of men do this. They equate feminine energies with being non-masculine. We tend to be the very organized one, the one that's very action-oriented, the one that's organized, the one that's decisive, right? The one that can fire people. That's a very masculine quality. But it doesn't mean that women don't share in that quality. It just means,
yeah, you can. It's very true, especially when I think about myself as you talk about this, because my first husband was a very manly man, kind of, I wouldn't say macho. Well, maybe I would, but I think that as I got through, like I was very emotionally broken and I needed a lot of taken care of emotionally when we first met. And as the years progressed and I grew back into who I really am and the strength that I really have. And he needed my strength for us to get through his schooling and to support him, to start our businesses, to do all these things. That's when my masculine energy was really handy. But when it wasn't handy was when we were dealing on personal issues. So I think he didn't like being with so much masculine energy in the house. Whereas Andrew, on the other hand, has a nice balance of both energies. And it plays well into our relationship because he can talk about it and just say, he can cry at a touching show, but then he can also kind of just say, hey, just back it up. Like, when I'm coming on too strong. So it's great when you have someone who can recognize it and not be threatened by it, but also not be threatened by it existing within themselves, with their partner and in themselves.
Yeah, that's
I feel
true.
lucky.
And yeah, you should be, because you're right. Andrew is a very balanced person when it comes to that. And just meeting him over the years, you can see where he is a very caring and loving person. Yet he's also very focused, very determined. That's a masculine, quality. But you said something that was key, and I think it's key for everything that we talk about on the show, is recognition, right? One of the things that you'll hear people say is, damn, your male ego is just tame your ego. And what it is, it's an overindulgent of masculine energy. That's what the ego is. So when you hear somebody saying tame your ego, what they're saying is, hey, calm down, back up, drop your ego, get it in check, recognize what you're doing, and then extend a hand instead of a finger. That's how when I work with men who suffer from an overindulged ego, what I tend to do is, when you are at that point and someone says to you, tame your ego, my response to them is, think about it as extending your hand instead of your finger. Because when you extend the finger, you're pointing at someone. You're telling someone this is my business and I'm going to tell you what to do. But when you extend a hand, it's an open invitation for discussion. So that's the first step for me when I see somebody that's overindulged in male energy. So just a thought out there.
I love that saying, extend a hand instead of a finger. And it helps me to reflect back on moments of my overindulged male energy ego. Because we all do. We all have it. It's just a matter of recognizing, right? Because how many times have you had a mirror put to your face of who you are, and you still try and justify who you are or what you're doing? I gave you that example of the person who was claiming to be of a very compassionate, loving, spiritual orientation, and yet was being very harsh and gossipy. And I pointed out that they were not in alignment with what they say they believe, and pointed out that you could do this in a compassionate way and not be so mean and critical. And just came right back with, well, it triggered me, and this person's still this way, and I still, and just went right back to where they were. And I think what you're telling me, if I'm correct, is that's the ego speaking. Yeah. That's that I don't want to be wrong, even when the mirror is there. It takes a lot, speaking from my experience, to step back and go, take a breath. Okay, yeah, they're right. It's hard.
Yeah, it is tough.
But the more you do it, the easier it is.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we try on this show to tell people, is to, recognize when something's not going right, or you're feeling down about something, or you've lashed out at somebody, or, excuse me, or you're making a point and it's coming off very harsh. It's stop, take a breath. Think about why you're doing that. What place in the body are you feeling the tension, or what place in the body are you feeling the anxiety? Recognize it. Think of other moments in life where you felt the same experience that you're feeling right now. See if there's a correlation. Start looking at yourselves, trying to understand yourself. Those are all important steps to develop a proper balance in masculine and feminine energies. One of the things I wanted to say is a simple example of this is a father and a son are getting ready for work. And the father looks at his watch and he says, I'm running late. I got to get my son moving. And he starts yelling at his kid, come on, let's go. And the kid runs down the stairs and he's crying and he's got his shoes in his hands. And he said, I can't remember how to tie my shoes. And the father said, I don't care. Just grab your shoes and let's go. All right. That's a very masculine oriented, overindulged male ego. If he would have stopped, took a pause, thought about it, realized that, yeah, time is getting late, but your son also has a problem. And that problem is he doesn't know how to tie his shoes. He doesn't remember. You just taught him last week. So instead of yelling at him saying, hey, buddy, what can we do differently to get you moving a little bit faster? Now there's a respect that's involved. Now the son has an opportunity to explain to his dad what's going on. And then he can say, all right, let me tie your shoe now so we can get moving. And then this evening we'll go through it again and we'll show you how to do it again. So now you're extending, and that's what I mean by extending the hand, right? And before he extended the finger, said, you've got to do this. Second time, he extends his hand and he leads with compassion instead of leading with an overindulged, masculine and energetic ego, really. So I think it is about approach, and it's about pausing and recognizing what's going on and then going at it in a different way.
I love that story. And I hope you don't mind if I use that using a hand instead of a finger example,
No, not at
because
all.
that it's just sticking with me because it's visuals. I am a huge person for visuals. I use visuals when I think. That's how I remember things. I use them when I teach. I can't talk easily. Like when I'm doing presentations, I flow so much more easily because I've got visuals. So visuals are very important to me. And I think to a lot of people. I don't think I'm alone. But I think back too about when you point a finger at someone, you have one finger pointed at them and three fingers pointing back at you.
Yeah.
And so that is an indication you need to look back at yourself. And I know we keep beating that dead horse, but the reason that we have to keep beating that dead horse is because it's not the natural course, right? It's not the natural course, because our ego says, protect you, protect who you are, how you think, what you do, protect you, because you don't want to see yourself as bad. Even when the opportunity of seeing yourself as bad can help you to be a better person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right on that. It's one of the times in my life where this first had a huge impact on me. And it was later in life, actually. You would think that it would have been younger, but I think I always knew that I was in touch with, I didn't understand it as being feminine energies, but I was always in touch with my feminine side. Like I wasn't opposed to crying. I wasn't opposed to telling people how I felt. I was a little bit more creative and I was able to express that. So I always knew that something wasn't quite the same as some of my friends, but I never it never made a difference to me until my dad was sick. And my brother was up from North Carolina and we were at the hospital and they had to do emergency surgery on him to go in and do a heart catheterization. And they had to do, I think they were saying 3 of them. He had 2 arteries that were 100% occluded and meaning blocked. And then he had one that was like 80%. So they couldn't do the surgery at that hospital. So they had to fly him to Washington Hospital Center in DC so they could do the surgery. And I remember them coming out and telling us, and I remember me being very calm and looking at the rest of the family and saying, hey, we have to approach this where they know what's best. We have to trust in their ability to do this right. And we're just going to get in the cars and meet them down at Washington Hospital Center. That's what we have to do. And everybody was, in agreement. Well, of course, my mom was upset and my brother was really upset. And I didn't realize how upset he was until we walked out of the hospital to get to our cars. And he literally kicked those metal cage trash cans that are in a lot of office spaces outside.
Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty big.
They're pretty big. He kicked it over. He was so mad. And that's when I realized, wow, look at the difference between the energy he's giving off and the energy that I'm getting off. Both males, both approaching it differently. And that was very acceptable, right? That kind of behavior, when you step out of it, that kind of behavior is very acceptable. When men get loud and men get angry and men fire people and men tell people what to do, that's an acceptable behavior typically. That's changing, thank God. But back then, this was, in the late 90s. So it was still very behavior that was just expected for men. And I noticed at that point that something's, not that anything's wrong, but that something's different. Like it really drew a picture for me that, we go about things differently. And not that anyone's better or worse than the other. It's just that when you don't allow yourself to feel, right? When you don't allow yourself to be in touch with your true emotion, when you don't have you talk about this all the time, emotional vocabulary that's beyond mad, sad, happy, when you don't foster that, you tend to operate in a way where those behaviors just repeat themselves over and over again. And it's not that it's necessarily bad. It's just that there's no growth. There's no extension of the hand. I'm doing what I'm expected to do. And that can be tough for people until you learn, right, how to recognize what's going on and then realize that, wow, all this anger and all this stuff that I'm holding and I've been holding for years, I don't have to. I don't have to anymore. And that's huge for people.
And never had to. It's just societally.
Right. Societally.
We were raised this way. We're all supposed to be able to, I'm sure that there's a lot of factors that play into why some people have a little bit more masculine or a little bit more feminine. You see it with small kids.
Sure.
It's not like a big mystery, but you cannot shy away from the natural things like crying. Crying is a stress reliever. We always tell Rebecca, for those who don't know, I have an adult autistic niece, and she has these buildup of emotions. And if anyone can't identify them, so for those who are out there who don't know, I have an adult autistic niece, and she has emotions that she can't label. So she can't put the feeling to it. And so she gets really upset. And so when things aren't going her way and she's acting out, sometimes it'll just come out in lots of tears. Like she just has a breakdown and she cries and cries and cries. And we will say, oh, sometimes a girl just needs a good cry, but it's not just girls, it's everybody. And there's a release that comes with tears that you don't get from kicking cans or kicking garbage cans or, being violent. Like that doesn't necessarily give you the relief that you're looking for, but, and it's not necessarily as healthy for you. You could hurt a toe or a hand when you punch a wall.
Yeah. At times, Kim and I have referenced books that relate to various topics that we're talking about. And one of the books that we've mentioned in the past that I think is a brilliant book is How Emotions Are Made, The Secret Life of the Brain by Lisa Feldman Barrett.
Love
That's
it,
a
love it, love it.
right, great
Yep.
book. Another one,
Complicated.
very complicated. Another one, Mindfulness for Beginners. John Kabat-Zinn. That's a really good book. Principles of Problem Formation and Problem Resolution. Paul, and I'm going to spell his last name, Watzlawik. Another good book. There's tons of books out there that reference this type of topic. But I think we go back to what we've always said. It's recognizing when something is off, recognizing when you say something and you wonder, why did I just say that? It's taking those special moments and really sit down with yourself and think those through. And you can do that on a run in the morning. You can do that on, playing soccer on the weekends. You can do that watching football. You can do that driving in a car. It's taking the little moments throughout the day that you have and just say, wow, why did I say that? Could I have said it better? Especially around the topics of if you're a manager and you have to fire somebody. It's saying you're telling them already that we're going to let you go. When in reality, what you mean is they've allowed themselves to let themselves go. So how do you frame it so that the ownership is on them, not on you as a company, right? Those kinds of things, think through those kinds of scenarios, because those are the scenarios that are prominent in your mind, things that you do all the time. And if you can adjust those in the way that you respond to people, then that will help you respond in other scenarios that that you don't often find yourself in. So it's, taking your moments.
Yeah. And understanding that, like with your brother, he probably was having a difficult time identifying his emotion.
Oh, he was
There's
completely closed off that whole day.
and there's a difference, and I don't think people realize this. Emotions are physiological. Your brain gets sensory input, it's data. So your brain's just a little computer. There's sensory input comes in, your brain has to figure out what to do with it. And it has to be able to figure out how to respond. And it's coming from these sensations that are going on. It's called interoception. And it comes from our surroundings, the internal sensations that it creates inside of our body. And feelings are when we are able to label it. So you could have an emotion and not have the label and be extremely like your brother because you don't know how to label it. And when you can look at this situation, label your emotion and say, this is what's going on, which is what you're suggesting, and which the emotion chef is entirely about.
Right.
That, right? That
Yeah.
gives you the ability to recognize it, deal with it, and pivot, because knowing is more than half the battle. Recognizing the ability to be agile in your emotional responses. It doesn't mean that you're not sad, but you can identify it and do something about it. And that's where so many people get lost. They don't cry. They react in bursts, like you talk about it, because they've got the emotion in the body and they can't label it.
Yeah. That's so true. I think the thing that comes to mind when you're talking and as we're going through this podcast is there's a very great need right now to create compassion and kindness for ourselves and for others. That's a huge need right now, not only in this country, but it's a huge need throughout the world. In order to do that, I believe we need to pause, take a moment, reflect on what's going on, and then have the courage to feel your authentic feelings and emotions, right? And taking the responsibility to care, by communicating your truth. That way you can create a world and even an environment that brings much more peace and joy. If we don't do that, we're going to keep behaving in the same way over and over again. And by doing that, we minimize our chances of living a more compassionate and kind world and life.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to come back to the energies for a second, because we kind of talked a lot about male energy and the results of male energy, and too much feminine energy leads to what I would call just too strong of an emotional response.
Yes.
And emotions are not facts. Feelings are not facts. And when we can't employ the masculine side of us, which we've talked about, this is that whole decision making. What does my head say? What does my heart say? What does my gut say? So the feminine energies relying very heavily on their emotions, their heart, when making decisions and responding in situations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you say to the heavily feminine? We kind of beat up on the heavily masculine. So
we sure did.
We need to balance that.
Right. So it would be energies that take you away from a more concrete understanding or a more concrete reality. So a feminine energy, a person that likes to be creative, if they're constantly living in a creative mode, then they're constantly living in a dream state, and they're constantly living in a very fluid and separating themselves from reality, right? So that's when the feminine energies are overindulged. Have you ever noticed a woman who has lost their child, right? And they pick up a baby doll and they're with that baby doll 24/7, and they're in an overly indulged, nurturing pattern that goes on for a couple weeks, maybe, okay, months, years. They're so nurturing that it takes them out of reality, right? That's when those energies are overindulged. Somebody that cries all the time, right? That can lead also to depression. So be careful there. But, someone that's crying all the time, or when you talk to somebody and they respond with emotion rather than with words to describe what's going on. I'll walk into a place and I'll say, "Hey, how you doing? I've been crying all day." Well, I didn't ask you that. You know what I mean? But they felt the need that was so important that they needed to do that. So it's that kind of energy that takes us out of reality in a way, right? There's no logic. There's no structure. There's no focus. It's total wide open all the time. That also needs to be tamed, right? Because we need to bring balance, right? A more holistic approach, a more collaborative approach, being productive yet creative. Those kinds of energies that bring balance to the over masculine and the over feminine.
Yeah, I think about when men say, "Oh, she's so emotional and I can't reason with her."
Right.
And I've found men who are that way too, but that's the strong feminine energy at play.
Also,
correct?
The strong male energy to even say that I can't reason with her, because that's what I do.
Exactly. So you can imagine that combination, what it's like. But the point I want to make is feelings, once again, are not facts. And when you are so invested in your feelings, it's just as much as it's the polar opposite of the person who doesn't have any feelings and tries to suppress them, or who can't identify them. When you are so invested in your emotions and how you feel about things and your emotional responses, you fail to bring in logic, especially when logic is presented to you. It's like, well, I feel this way. Well, great. I understand you feel this way, but is it true? And our feelings are not always true. Emotions are typically based on things that have happened in the past, and we're bringing the past into the present, and it's not necessarily factual. So for anyone who's listening that leans so much on their emotions, it's good to, once again, like John talked about, is think about things, be present, and try to listen to what is being presented to you from an aspect that doesn't involve how you feel.
Yeah.
So as much as you want some people to add feelings, you want some other people to kind of back it up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll hear me a lot talk about the pause, taking a pause. And if you can't do that in the moment because of whatever situation you're in, there's no reason why you can't do that after the situation is over with, right? Because that moment in the car where you can actually think about things, practicing the pause gives you the ability to affect change the next time something happens, right? If you never pause, then you're just going to repeat. So if you can't pause, what's that?
Why, John? And why does practicing that help change your future responses? Because neurons that wire together fire together.
Fire together. That's right.
And so if you keep creating a pattern of change and a new response to situations, your brain is going to learn.
Our goal today was to give our listeners a lot of examples, right, of masculine energies, of feminine energies, of balanced energies, right? So that we can begin to understand why we respond the way that we do. And if we can respond better, then choose to do better.
I really like the fact that you use the word choose.
Yeah.
Because our responses are ours and ours alone. We can control them. This is not brought on by other people. People don't create our responses. We do.
Yes.
We like to blame other people, but it's us. So we have the choice. We have so much power. It's ridiculous with our mind. And choose power, choose strength, choose it, and you will see your life change. I know I have.
Oh yeah, me too. All right, Kim. Well, hey.
John, thank you so much. I love
so much.
hearing you talk on and on and on about this stuff. I always learn something new. So one finger out, extend the hand instead.
That's right. Extend the hand. The hand is open. The finger's closed.
Yes.
All right. Well, listen, Kim, have a great week.
You too. Thank you for your help.
And thanks, listeners. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
New shows are available every Saturday right here on HeartMind-ify.podbean.com or wherever you listen. Kim and I would like to thank each and every one of you for allowing us to be a small part of your life. Be kind to yourself and remember, our hearts tell the story, but our mind is the conductor.